Hello and welcome back to Talkin' Giants, presented by the Fanatics Sportsbook. It is May 28th, 2026. And what we are doing today is we are going through the top 5 Giants' biggest areas that they need to improve on for the 2026 season. My name is Justin Pennick. My co-host is Shaun Marash, known as being part of the WFAN Evan and Tiki Show with Shaun Marash. Shaun, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm stunned that this is not a full Wally Pip. I thought after your trip to Charlotte and the obviously stellar episode I did with Art Stapleton, you were done for here. But it's good to see you back, Justin. Dude. I would be lost without you, so I am very glad you're back. Dude,
I need to give you your flowers, and I texted you this when I wanted to do this backstage before we started. I need to give you your flowers because I thought you handled that show beautifully. You and Art handled it beautifully. You even did like a solo portion of it to start. You did a Justin Pennick classic of doing a 10-minute solo ep before you bring on the guest, which I loved. I need to tell you something. If I was on that ep where I had to talk about that situation, I would have been a nothing zero. It would have been such bad radio. Because Shaun, I'm gonna tell you something. I don't give two shits about that situation, and I don't think it matters.
It doesn't
matters at all.
But it was the biggest while you were in Charlotte, dude. Saturday, Giant Twitter basically erupted. So yes, it had to be done. And Justin, I feel confident in the episode. You know how I feel confident? This has nothing to do with politics. Anytime you look at your at mentions and you're called an absolute liberal or an absolute conservative, almost alternating in tweets, that tells me I probably handled it right because I think both sides ended up being pissed off at me. So
and the comments of our YouTube section, which was very good. It was not talking about anything that you said.
Good.
It was talking about the topic and the situation. And that is why I know that you guys, and specifically you, since you started out the show kind of talking about it too, that's how I know that you and Art handled it perfectly. Because it wasn't about, what the hell did you say? Or what do you mean that you think this, you think that? That's how I know that you guys handled it perfectly. So perfect. I am so glad.
On to football.
I was not on that because I would have provided nothing.
You can't make up that that's the first episode I've done without you. You can't make it up that happened.
Thank God.
But away we go. On to football, Justin. On to football.
On to football, man. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Appreciate everybody being on. Hope you had a good Memorial Day. Hope you had a good holiday. The summer has now kicked off. So appreciate everybody being here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through 1 through 5, the biggest areas of improvement for 2026. These are the 5 areas kind of based on 2025 and even just based on the Giants as a whole. What do the Giants need to improve on? And we're going to talk about if they did improve on those things, how they might have improved on those things this offseason, and things like that. So, Shaun, I think we should start at number 5. We both have a consensus number 1, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to do is the first thing that we're going to talk about, this number 5, it may not actually be number 5. What Shaun and I are going to do is at the end of the show, we're going to make a consensus 1 through 5 list. We have a consensus number 1 that I'm going to keep in my back pocket. Shaun created 2. I created 2 areas of improvement. We're going to make a consensus 2 through 5 list at the end, and then we'll see if people agree and even leave a comment on the 5 areas of improvement that you think the Giants should make next year too. How's that sound?
I think that sounds like a great idea, and I would say it's not a consensus number 1 for me and you. It's probably a consensus number 1 for the organization, the fan base alike, and us.
It's not a consensus number 1 for you. So you lied to me.
No. You misheard me. I said I don't think it's just a consensus for me and you. I think it's also a consensus with the fan base as a whole and the organization as a whole.
Oh, yes, 1,000%.
That's 1,000%. A little spoiler alert. Think about it.
So I want you to rip yours off, one of yours off first. Which one do you want to start with?
Okay. Now I'm totally thrown off. Honestly, dude, how about let's go with the sacks. Okay. Here's one I have. Turning pressures into sacks, I think is a huge area for improvement. And just before we break down the nitty-gritty, I have like an overarching take on this that I think was really prevalent last year. And I felt like Justin, you know that that meme or the GIF where it's Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV while holding the beard? You know what I'm talking about?
Snapping the fingers.
Snapping the finger and pointing. Yep. That felt like me last year several times. And this is simply this. The Giants' area of improvement for me, turning pressures into sacks. This is not a specific knock on Abdul Carter, but pressures were used to elevate the season Abdul Carter had. And while I agree with that, he's not just the one guilty of this. I oftentimes hear and we fall into this malaise trap in recent years of sacks are an overrated stat. We hear this constantly. Sacks are an overrated stat. And I always hated hearing that because I think it's right in terms of when analyzing a specific player, but it's not right when analyzing a team. And again, this is a podcast where we're talking about the improvements for the team. Here's what sacks do when you get them. They create negative plays. Every single time you finish a sack, it's a negative play. What pressures do is pressures sometimes lead to a negative play if it leads into a sack by another player, let's say, like one player has a pressure and somebody else gets a sack, or it leads into a net neutral play where it's a quarterback throwing the ball away or running back up to the line of scrimmage, or sometimes it still leads to a big play down the field. If a wide receiver escapes, you can get a pressure, or the quarterback takes off, a la Leonardo DiCaprio meme. How many times did Caleb Williams do that whenever the Giants were pressuring him versus the Bears last year?
Yeah, dude, it's a different game. It's a different game if they're even able to get him on the ground for half of those plays, Shaun. And I mean, what sacks do, they end drives. I mean, point blank, period, that's it. They end drives.
So you think about the way the Giants had built that defense last year, and I take you back into a time capsule, and we talked about what we thought the strength of the Giant team would be, and it would be pass rush. And to an extent it was, right? Brian Burns has an unbelievably all-world year. But outside of that, the sack numbers overall for the Giants were very low. Look at every other player not named Brian Burns. And not that you're expecting a bunch of 12 sack guys, but this is an overall number for the Giants, Justin, that needs to come up. Pressures are great. Pressures burst pipes, but pressures don't end drives and don't create the full negative plays on every single time. The Giants have enough of horses in the stable here, and that even includes now what they've done at the linebacker core with adding Tremaine Edmonds and Orville Reese on top of what you expect from Abdul Carter this year. Kayvon Thibodeau as well being healthy, and maybe even Chauncey Golston getting into the work. So, Justin, overall, a big area of improvement for this Giant team for me, and I know we're going to break down some of the numbers, is just simply taking the pressures they had last year, and can we turn maybe half of them, a third of them more into sacks? Because that, I think, would drastically flip some of these close games the Giants had last year.
So when you sent this to me, I started to I've never actually fully looked at the league-wide numbers of what teams are the best at converting pressures into sacks. I've never actually done that. I kind of found a little bit of a correlation, and I'm even noticing this right now. We're going to talk about turnovers a little later, too. The New Orleans Saints were the best team last year at converting pressures into sacks. They had 45 sacks, around 238 pressures. They had a conversion rate of around 18 to 19% in pressures, right?
Okay.
That was number one in the league. The Atlanta Falcons were kind of not far behind. The Browns, the Broncos, the Bears. They were the top five.
So only two playoff teams, by the way. Only two playoff teams in the top five.
Those teams also were pretty good in turnover rate, too. And I'm just kind of eyeballing that. I'm eyeballing that. I actually want to find out right now. So, Shaun, you're looking at the doc, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the doc. So, when we go back to the turnover,
the Bears were number one in turnover rate last year. They're top five in this list, right?
Yes, they are 5. The Broncos are 4.
The Rams, where are they on this list?
The Rams are number 17.
The Texans?
In pressure. The Texans are number 18.
Steelers?
Steelers are 14.
Okay, so maybe there is no correlation. Maybe there's just
Giants, by the way, for the record, we should probably get this out of the way. We're 15th, so right in the middle of the pack in converting pressures into sacks.
Yeah, so I think that goes to your point that if they were 10th, if they were top 10, if they were top 5 in this list, and then you're kind of your eyeball test said that they needed to get better at it, then I'd be like, maybe you got to check it. But I don't think you do. I don't think you do. I mean, especially for Abdul Carter, right? And this is where this needs to even out. Abdul Carter with the 6.1% conversion rate of pressures to sacks, around 6%. That needs to get better because he had Will Anderson from his rookie year with 10%. He had 7 sacks his rookie year, which is a pretty good number.
Yeah.
Will Anderson had 10%, but then even Jared Verse had 5%. Now, Jared Verse also had 89 pressures, where Abdul Carter was in the 60s. So Jared Verse's rookie season was insane, but he also only had 4.5 sacks. But you still saw the years go on for those two, and the really good rookie years pressure-wise, but the year 2 and year 3 jumps that those players respectively have made have been very, very good. And I am expecting something very similar from Abdul Carter to get up to that Jared Verse level, to take that Will Anderson type of jump with the sack numbers, right? Here's the number that I think is going to go down. Brian Burns converted like 30%, 31% of his pressures into sacks, which
Career
is
year,
an insane rate. As a reminder, the Saints were number one at around 18 to 19%. So that was the number one team in the league. And Brian Burns nearly doubled that rate as a player, where he ended the year with 16 and a half sacks, right? I don't think Brian Burns is going to have another year where 30% of his pressures are turned into sacks. So where is that, the balancing act, right? Mm-hmm. Where are those sacks and where are those pressures going to come from? You're hoping that a fully healthy year of Kayvon Thibodeau, you're hoping that Arvo Reese is adding a couple sacks to that mix too and converting pressures into sacks. And like that rate for Arvo Reese should be high. Like I can easily see, and I'm hoping that there's some schemed up pressure and schemed up sacks that Denard Wilson can make, whether Arvo Reese coming in as a delayed blitzer, late pressure, things like that. If you're sending him off the line, if you're stacking like him and another edge rusher on the side of like by a tackle, and then you're sending him late where hopefully it's untouched, right? So that's the stuff that I think is going to have to balance out that Brian Burns number going down from around 30, 32%. And then, of course, Abdul Carter, that conversion rate needs to go up. Like, I'm hoping that conversion rate possibly doubles in year two to like 12%. Can he get 12% of his pressures into sacks?
Yeah, and then what I love about talking about conversion rate, that doesn't necessarily just mean who leads the team in sacks, right? Obviously, because it's just about who's getting the pressure. So, for instance, you bring up the Brian Burns conversion rate. Well, Brian Burns also at the beginning of the year might face a lot of double teams because he's the known commodity in terms of the sacks a year ago, where at the beginning of the year, you want Abdul Carter just to spike that number while he is pressuring to finish it. But the bottom line is, like Justin, or you mentioned Arvo Reese, you mentioned all this, like all of these pressure stats that the Giants throw out there, like if we're using pressure in a second straight year for Abdul Carter, but he's sitting there with 6 sacks, nobody is going to be thrilled with that year. And then we kind of become that pathetic fan base that's pointing to like the extra analytical stats like that. The bottom line is this: bury quarterbacks behind a line of scrimmage, and you're putting teams in second and longs, or on third downs, you're ending complete drives when you bring those packages. And if you were fielding a team where at times Kayvon with Arvell Reese and Abdul Carter, Brian Burns all may be on the field at the same time in packages, it would be highly disappointing to be middle of the pack in the NFL in sacks. This has the personnel on this team to be a top 10 sacking team in the NFL, and that, again, is how you flip single score games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially for a defense that has struggled with turnovers. I mean, a sack as a drive ender basically is a turnover, right?
Basically is a turnover, exactly.
They were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 8. They were 18th in sack rate last year. That's that number.
18th in sack rate with one of the
10.
top 3 guys in the NFL in sacks.
Yeah, they need to be top. They need to be top 10.
Yeah,
at worst.
If that's the strength of your team. Think about it. If we remember, we were listing the strengths of the team: offensive line, pass rush. If that's the strength of your team, you can't be 18th.
No, you cannot. Not with the personnel that they have this year. No, absolutely.
No way.
No way. Your fourth edge rusher, Chauncey Golston, is getting paid. Is getting paid as the highest fourth edge rusher in the NFL too. Interested to see what they have planned for him. Yeah, the top 10 needs to be in sack rate overall. We'll see how it winds up with converting pressures into sacks and things like that. We'll see how that kind of turns out. But sack rate overall, they need to be top 10 for sure, 100%. All right, I'm going to go into my first one. Which one I want to talk about first?
I kind of think you should talk about the one we teased a little bit here throughout talking about the sack rate. I think that
turnovers.
Yeah, I think it ties right in, man.
100%. Can we finally create some damn turnovers, please?
Love it.
Because the last time that we did in 2023, think of how miserable that offense was, right? How miserable. Especially compared to 2024 and 2025. 2024, at certain times, the offense was moving the ball, dare I say, even with Daniel Jones, right? Like,
yeah.
There was a couple games where they moved the ball awful inside the red zone, and the 2025 Giants aren't that far behind, believe it or not, in some red zone numbers, but they scored. The 2025 Giants scored. 2023, compared to 2024, that 2023 offense was abysmal.
Oh, we had hand signals. Oh, the gabagool. That was 2023.
But you want to know what they did in 2023? They won more games than they did in 2024 and 2025. You want to know why?
Turnovers.
They created some damn turnovers, man. They were 9th in turnover rate as a defense in 2023. They were plus 12 in overall turnover differential. That was tied for first in the NFL. You want to know what they followed that up with in 2024? They were 28th in turnover rate with a minus 8 turnover differential. In 2025, they were 24th in turnover rate as a defense with a overall minus 2 turnover differential. That was good for 18th. So you started to even it out a little bit more. I am ready to retire the talking point that turnovers are random and fluky. That it's just one of those things that, it doesn't matter. It's not something you can predict. It's not something that is worth analyzing because it's fluky and it's random. I am retiring that talking point, and that's probably very analytical analytics guy, right? I think they can be predicted depending on personnel and scheme changes, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna go through a couple examples here. The Steelers, every single year under Mike Tomlin, they're top 10 in the league in turnover rate. And also, the turnovers that they create, it's like the devil witch magic that Mike Tomlin would do to get to 9 wins. The turnovers that they create seemed always to be timely and like in the fourth quarter.
Yes, right. As soon as Sticks and Renegade is playing at home, they have a big turnover.
The Bears with Dennis Allen was number 1 this year, even though that defense largely was not good. Like they were a bad defense. But you want to know what they did? They created a bunch of turnovers, and it makes the overall unit make a lot better, and it helps you win football games.
Yep.
And even when he was head coach of the Saints, they were consistently top end of the league too. So that's scheme, right? Texans with DeMeco Ryans the last 2 years since they added an insane pass rush have been top 6. Dan Quinn with the Cowboys had an insane 3-year stretch where they were top 3 in consecutive seasons. And I was waiting for the shoe to drop. I was waiting like, the Cowboys defense is going to regress because they're going to stop creating turnovers. And guess what? They never did under Dan Quinn. They never did. Now, every team is different. The Bucs are a team that's a high blitz rate team, an aggressive team, where basically since 2021, they flip-flop. Like every other year is a good year for turnovers, and then they'll have an off year where they're like around average or even a little bit below average. So every team is different. But the point is, I just brought up numerous examples of between Dennis Allen, between Mike Tomlin's Steelers, between Dan Quinn's Cowboys, where they had that run with that type of personnel and scheme, and they were able to marry it. Those teams have an identity or had an identity as the lights go out in Georgia.
Oh, boy.
Those teams have an identity of creating turnovers. And there is no reason why between the Giants pass rush and really like the guys that they added in the secondary and as linebackers too, like Tremaine Edmonds in his coverage ability, long arms, he's a guy that should force turnovers. They're going to rely on him as a coverage linebacker. I know Denard Wilson is going to really rely on these linebackers to cover. The safeties that they have, Devon Holland, like, can we get back to what we were doing between 2021 to 2023? Tyler Nubin, what's your role going to be? But all you did in college was create turnovers. Paulson Adebo. Colton Hood is here too as a guy that can make plays on the football, even though his ball production at Tennessee wasn't that awesome. This should be a defense and a defensive coordinator that should create turnovers. And I am, even if the Giants get up to an average point, an average turnover rate as a defense, if they're responsible with the ball on offense and that turnover differential is higher, that within itself will be a reason why the 2026 Giants win more games.
Look, this is one of those things that's cliche, but it's so true. Like, it's so beyond true. Very Mike Francesa-like, by the way. Justin pulling a Diet Coke out of his back pocket. Very Francesa-like. So true. Now, Justin, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and picture the 2025 New York Giants season, okay? Remember, the Giants didn't win a lot of football games. They won 4 football games. I'm going to remove that final game with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott leaves at halftime. It's weird. Yeah. It's Week 18. So let's point to their 3 real wins here for a second, if you will. Okay, Justin? Your lasting image of the Giant Charger win, do you remember what it was?
Dexter Lawrence had a pick 6 in that game if you're getting at turnovers.
Dexter Lawrence. Now, I think he got tackled before the one. I don't think he ran it.
All right, then it was close to a pick 6.
Okay, think about that game's basically a 3-point game. It changes on Dexter Lawrence's pick 6. You have, of course, the Eagle game How about Cordell Flott? Okay, remember that.
6.
And then the Raiders, Bobby Okereke, 47-yard return on an interception, as well as Drew Phillips had a pick in that game. Or it would have been, I think Drew Phillips had a pick in the Charger game, Cowboy game. It was Dane Belton also had a pick in the Raider game. The point is, your lasting images of basically the 3 real wins, and that's not to discount the last week, but it's the last week of the season of the Giants, is the games changed because they forced turnovers. Why did they lose the New Orleans Saints game? Because the Saints forced all those turnovers.
Yep.
Why did they end up losing the Denver Bronco game? Above anything else, the Broncos forced that turnover on the Jaxson Dart interception, flipped the entire game. It's cliche because it's true in football. The Giants won 3 football games before that final week, all based on creating turnovers. They didn't create them in the other games, and they lost a lot of football games. So this is an enormous need for improvement.
Yeah. Just sick and tired of going into the last 2 years, they just didn't do it at all. I mean, especially 2024. There's just no thought. Seemingly the last 2 years under Bowen, there was seemingly no thought that the defense was going to force a turnover and have a game where the switch is flipped suddenly. Momentum can be flipped. That was not a thought.
Now, with that thought, obviously we just talked about the turning pressure into sacks, right? And we gave a lot of names there, Reese and Carter, and how the Giants could do this. Of all the things we're going to do today, this is my biggest worry, Justin, about improving this area.
Yeah.
Think about everything I just named off about the difference when the Giants had turnovers. And let's just play the game. Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke, Cordell Flott, Dane Belton. What do they all have in common?
Those guys are gone. Now, I will say, the biggest X factor for the Giants creating turnovers, I do think, is Bernard Wilson.
Yes, and by the way, I'm not acting like Dexter Lawrence is an interception machine or Bobby Okereke was great or Dane Belton. Dane Belton, somehow, he was the one guy in the secondary. Always the football seemed to find him.
Yeah, no matter the scheme, he was the one guy that did create turnovers.
So, and I'm not acting like because they have Bernard Wilson, they won't create turnovers. I'm just saying, Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, you mentioned those guys. Those guys are brought here to create turnovers. It does worry me that when you list off the big turnovers they had, none of those guys are here, and it's going to have to come within. The Giants really only added Newsome and Colton Hood to the mix in terms of where you would expect turnovers to come from, and we'll see how those guys fare. This is going to be on the guys that were already here, namely Adebo and Holland.
Yeah. Or Darius Washington is still the wild card in that too.
True.
IMO.
True. Does a Darius Washington lead the team in interceptions this year?
Hopefully for their sake, no. But
yeah,
you know what? Maybe they were talking about Darius Washington getting a payday.
Yeah.
Which may not be the worst thing. All right, so I want to talk about something first.
You do it.
I want to talk about something first. And what I want to talk about is SeatGeek before we move on to our other areas of improvement. Because today's episode is sponsored by SeatGeek. Of course, the MLB season is here. Not to mention, the New York Knicks are in the finals. My New York Knicks, congratulations to Nicky Snacks. He is in the NBA Finals. And the NHL playoffs, that's also happening. The finals for the NHL is happening.
John Tortorella just made the Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. How about that?
Congratulations. Oh, wow. I thought the Vegas people were doubting the Knights, too.
Yeah, they had less wins than the New York Islanders who missed the playoffs. They're now in the Stanley Cup final.
Fly out to Vegas using SeatGeek, see a finals game there, and then come back home and see a finals game for the New York Knicks. And of course, the World Cup is starting up very, very soon too. Which is why I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek. With over 35 million downloads and over 70,000 events listed, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app in the world. And of course, if you want to save some money, because I know you're going to need it, especially for those Knicks games. But SeatGeek has got some good deals because you can go on SeatGeek and you're like, is this a good deal? Because green means good and red means bad. You already know this. But you can use code JOHNBOY10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code JOHNBOY10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. And you'll thank me for that. And you'll thank Shaun for that. Thank you to SeatGeek. JOHNBOY10.
Hell yeah.
All right, you have one more.
I do have one more.
And I'm excited about this one.
I am too. So, little peel back the curtain. Justin and I were volleying back and forth the 5 that we were going to do today.
Yeah.
And we got into an argument about this specific one I'm going to bring to the table and what part of this specific one needs improving. And then Justin said, let's stop this arguing via text and let's just save it for the air.
Yeah.
So here it is. Area of improvement, the next one I have, simply put, the passing game for the New York Football Giants. And if you want to draw battle lines here, and by the way, by battle lines, I agree with Justin. It just wasn't my first thought. Justin is very big on Giants need to improve their under-center passing game, something that seems like is going on in OTAs right now. I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when you say, like, you're one of the biggest areas of improvement that the Giants need to make for the 2026 season is the passing game. The Giants were 10th in EPA per dropback last year as a team. Yeah. Dart was really, really good, and like even some of those advanced stats and things like that, like as a quarterback. Like I would argue that the 2025 Giants passing offense was the best that we've seen. Do I dare say, like even 2018? And I don't even think that was that great. They weren't even that explosive. So I think then you have to go back to 2015. Some would argue that the 2025 Giants passing offense was the best that we have seen in a decade since OBJ was running around here. So I thought the way that you presented passing offense, just as a whole, I disagree with. But there are certain elements of it, like you alluded to, that I think they do need to improve on as a passing offense. But go ahead and you give your point, and I'll give my conjectures.
And I kind of teased that Justin wanted to talk more under center, which I don't disagree with. Now, I want to make something clear. As you're listening to this episode and we rattle these off, we're saying the biggest areas of improvement. I don't automatically assume and interpret that to mean the areas that absolutely sucked, although some of them did. Yes, as Justin alluded to, the Giants finally were humming along. But I do think within those numbers gets lost some deception and there's some meat on the bone. First and foremost, I do think those numbers, ironically enough, were inflated a bit with the absolute stat inflation game that was week 3 with the Dallas Cowboys and the way that Russell Wilson threw for 400 yards and Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson are making plays down the field. I think that game exploded and heightened the passing game stats beyond belief. I also think when the Giants got in a little bit of rhythm, including that Lions game with Jameis Winston, that was not a Jaxson Dart game. And then on the flip side, it always seemed like when they were the Jaxson Dart games, the Giants, while those numbers were trending the right way, while they were scoring points on first drives, there was so much meat left on the bone in terms of drive-killing drops that have been a theme that we've talked about a lot between Darius Slayton and Theo Johnson. And this was a team that lost Malik Neighbors, as we know, basically the moment Jaxson Dart took on the field. So we can get into kind of the other stuff, but my overall theme on why this needs to improve is you have a franchise quarterback that is now entering year 2. The rookie training wheels are off, which I know is going to speak to some of what you're doing. This is a team that has invested this offseason in Isaiah Likely, the first free agent they signed off the board. I know not big money, but guys that got down the field and got after it, and Darnell Mooney and Calvin Austin, when they are at their best. They did trade a pick next year and a couple day 3 picks to get back up in the draft and draft Malachi Fields. So while we've talked about this team being like smash mouth, Patrick Ricard signed, run game, this, that, and the other, I do think that they have attacked this offseason with the idea of Jaxson Dart's going to have to go make plays to these guys. And I think some of those numbers you read were inflated in games that didn't feature Jaxson Dart, and at the same time were deflated in the idea that the Giants simply didn't make enough plays for their quarterback. And oh, by the way, they, in theory, if Francis Mauigoa, Assisi, is as good as we hope he could be, will have actually the best offensive line with Andrew Thomas there for the first 3 weeks that they have had in quite a long time for the passing offense, not just the run offense. Right. So big area of improvement that I think they've attacked in this offseason, that I do think that this is a team with this quarterback. I'd like to see them be top 10 EPA per play in this passing offense and the scoring offense beyond. But here you go. Cherry pick and pick off that.
No, and once you started to talk about that, then that also makes me think about the passing offense as it relates to, let's just use the Saints game as an example from that, right?
Okay.
Of course, they created 5 turnovers, and they turned the ball over 5 times, and they didn't force any turnovers, right? So you're never going to win a football game. But there was a certain point in that game that despite them having turnover after turnover, that they were still in that football, and also drop after drop, that goes to your point. They were still in the football game, right? But they're down multiple scores. They're down by 1 score, 2 scores in the second half. They eventually lose the game by 14-26. So
don't do that. Don't do it. Fix it.
26-14, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's how I looked at it on Pro Football Reference, because the Giants are listed first. But yes. So they lose the game by 12 points. That's 2 scores, right? They were not able, basically, to run out of 11 personnel with any confidence in that game and to be this pass-first team because they had no capable receivers. What was it, Bo Collins? This is pre-Isaiah Hodgins, by the way.
Yes.
Bo Collins, Wan'Dale Robinson, and then was it Jalen Hyatt because Darius Slayton got hurt and he also just couldn't catch a cold that game either?
It was Hyatt because they did not have Little Jordan elevated for the game. It was definitely Hyatt.
Jameis Winston is throwing to Jalen Hyatt at the end of the Lions game, and that's why they, and maybe that's not why they lose the game. They blow, the defense blows the game, but Jalen Hyatt was part of that receiving trio. So when they got to a point where they were behind, you're going to be behind in some games. You're not going to be ahead. If they ever got to a point where they were behind in the fourth quarter with that personnel, they just couldn't come back because if you have to run 11 personnel and the 3 receivers that you're relying on are Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, who was reliable, and then somebody else at certain points it got to, okay, Isaiah Hodgins is the most reliable receiver when you run 11 personnel. They had to solely run out of 12, and you're not going to run out of 12 personnel when you're behind by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, who do you think in that Saints game specifically, who do you think led the team in receptions? 2 guys tied.
I'm going to guess Scadaboo was still healthy for that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess Cam and Theo?
Yeah, it was Cam and Theo had 6 grabs, Wan'Dale had 5, and Daniel Bellinger had 4. And then, of course, you had the Slayton, Bo Collins, all that stuff, Hyatt. They all had 3 catches in that game.
Yeah. So that's by passing offense.
Well, Hyatt had nothing.
That's where I think when you started to talk about your point, that's what I thought of from a personnel standpoint. They should be able to confidently, even without Malik Neighbors, if they are without Malik Neighbors to start the year, you should be able to roll out 11 personnel somewhat confidently. Maybe not this is the best wide receiver trio. This 11 personnel with these 3 wide receivers, if you're putting Calvin Austin in the slot, Darnell Mooney and Darius Slayton out there, or even take one of them out and put Malachi Fields in there, either in the slot or the outside, while you're not strutting saying that this is awesome, it's better than putting Bo Collins out there.
Well, Justin, think about what the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs with their franchise quarterback have worked with a lot at wide receiver. And yeah, the Chiefs have added, guys like Worthy and Rashee Rice to the mix. But that's the kind of receiving core, a Calvin Austin, Darnell Mooney, Darius, that's a Buffalo Bills-esque receiving core. And Josh Allen figures it out with his tight ends and such. So obviously you would rather be improved and have Malik Neighbors out there. But this is a team that, with that personnel they've invested in, especially adding Isaiah Likely as well, they should be able to move the ball a lot more efficiently through the air this year.
Yeah, even saying that, going through this is why Malik Neighbors is so
of course he is
imperative and necessary. Because
no, look, they can get by and win some games without Malik Neighbors, but they cannot escalate to the point of an elite offense without him.
Yeah, if you're behind in the fourth quarter and that's the 11 personnel you got to run out with, like I said, it should be better than last year, but I guess that's not the highest of bars. But if you're behind in the fourth quarter and Malik Neighbors is out there, it's a much different story of my level of comfort that they could possibly come back in a game, right?
I'm with you. Now,
when you said passing, I have talked a lot about, and this is the area in my brain and how my brain works. Shaun and I were texting. I'm like, Shaun, did I lose my mic? I'm back.
Yeah, I'm back. Scared.
So, Shaun, get more specific on what about the passing offense needs to improve.
Yeah, you were yelling at me.
I know from when I was sitting at a bowling alley watching my 2 buddies Noodles and Michael Bokra watching the bowl. That's what I was doing, thinking about this.
I was watching my Noodles and Michael Bo too.
Really?
Yeah.
You have 2 friends named Bokra and Noodles?
I was pantsless.
By the way, Noodles and Snacks, 2 different people and 2 different friend groups. They know each other because I make all of my friends be friends with each other, but 2 different things. Anyway,
birthday tickets.
What I think about when I think passing offense in the area that it really needs to improve and take a step up in, specifically, it is the under center passing offense, and I am confident that under John Harbaugh, that we are going to see more under center passing with this offense. I watched every single pass attempt that Dart had under center. And I did this exercise a while ago. Like, I think during like a mailbag, I did this. I talked about it maybe a couple months ago. Now, some of the best throws and moments that he had from the 2025 season did come from under center, including the Daniel Bellinger touchdown versus Denver, where he was initially out of the shotgun. He audibled out of the shotgun, called a can, called something at the line, and then he goes under center, and it's a play action attempt, and Daniel Bellinger is wide open for a touchdown. There was a touchdown drop that little Jordan Humphrey had inside the 5-yard line at home by Philly. That was an awesome throw. It was an awesome throw. Probably like one of the best throws of Jaxson Dart's season, but it was dropped by little Jordan Humphrey. Shocker. The jump throw versus Chicago on a 4th and 1 where Daniel Bellinger dropped a touchdown. Now he had 2 defenders on him, but it hit him right in the damn hands, and it was a 4th and 1, and you got to come down with that. So some of Dart's best throws, just straight up from like a tape standpoint, came from under center. Every single pass attempt that he had under center, though, was either like a fake flea flicker or under center play action. There was zero conventional drop back under center non-play action pass attempts that Jaxson Dart had this year. And here are the numbers, by the way.
That's crazy.
He was 14 for 25. I did not do the rushing. He had some rushing totals under center too. I believe like 11 out of like the 35 or 36 attempts. Maybe some of them were sacks, some of them were rushing attempts. But he was 14 for 25, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had a drop touchdown, or 2 drop touchdowns as well. So almost 4 touchdowns, which is crazy. That would have been such a high touchdown rate. 13.2 yards per completion and 7.4 yards per attempt. Both of those totals would be pretty substantially higher than his regular season numbers. Now, again, it's such a low sample size compared to their shotgun, what they do out of the shotgun and out of the pistol and things like that. But still, they were able to get some big explosive plays and touchdowns out of going under center as well. And Jaxson Dart has already talked about during OTAs. That was one of his first quotes that have come out in the spring about the offense, is that we are going to be under center more, and I'm already being asked to do more under center play action. He has a good amount of experience doing under center play action. What I am interested in seeing is how much he is going to be asked to do under center, just conventional drop back passing. But Shaun, it makes me feel like if he's already doing under center play action, if that's a staple of the offense, probably we are also going to be doing under center conventional drop back passing as well. That's what I anticipate.
It's the next step. It's the next progression in his career. And I obviously have complete faith in a coaching staff. Let's just call it like the all-star offensive staff that they've assembled, that's all going to blend and move together. So, look, this seems like, at least the OTAs that were present with the media, that this is something that is existing. So, yeah, I do have confidence. And I think that Jaxson Dart got labeled very early on coming out of that Ole Miss Lane Kiffin offense that it was, very gimmicky. And that was part of the reason people didn't think he was going to start right away, right? Was, is he going to be ready for pro style? The fact that, and you even brought up some of those throws that were dropped and that even if they came off play action and all of that other stuff, like, it's not like he's incapable. And it's not like we're going to be playing with one hand tied behind our back for the rest of Jaxson Dart's career, that this is something he's incapable of doing. He showed that much, albeit without the conventional, like you said, that it's crazy that he didn't have one conventionally. But if he showed that much in play action, and they're already working on it here, he definitely seems cerebral enough. I do think that this is an element that will be featured this year for the New York Giants, and I do think that this will be a big step up and improvement within the passing game.
Yeah, I want to see if there were any sacks that he took. I'm going to load that up right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about because if you close your eyes, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that he just wouldn't take no for an answer and he'd keep running. I can't picture a lot of bad Jaxson Dart sacks like that.
Because there were sacks that, like Jaxson Dart does take sacks, but it also he doesn't take sacks that lose a lot of yards.
Yes, because he makes his way back up.
Yes. So he had a sack. So the sack fumble the really bad sack fumble that he had.
Which game?
The Saints.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That came from under center. And then that's basically it. He was sacked against Denver, and he lost 3 yards. Okay.
But again, Denver, we thought he was going to get crushed and take 10 sacks in that game. Remember the thought going into that game?
3. He was sacked 3 times.
He played so well in that. Man, that's the game. He played so well in that Denver game, affording the sacks, the pressure. That was his big boy pants game. It sucks the way it ended.
8.5 sack rate. That kind of. It's a little bit less than what his normal sack rate is, which is around like 9-ish%. So
by normal sack rate, you mean his college sack rate?
No, his sack rate, like from his rookie year, was a little over north of 9%, which is not really what you want your quarterback to do.
Right. But the way you worded that was like, which is less than his career, but he only had 1 year in his career.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
That confused me. Sorry.
All right. Get better. Not even get better under center, but the fact that it was just so non-existent from his pro game so far. So when Shaun says passing offense, he's kind of talking about it from like a personnel standpoint.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about it from an under center approach because they just didn't do it. And I think that if Jaxson Dart is going to continue to progress as a quarterback, some sort of under center conventional, even a conventional drop back game, that will need to be added to his arsenal this year.
Justin, in the end, what we're both saying about the passing game all blends together. If they do more under center and they have the right personnel and they're not dropping a million passes and they're putting themselves in less third and long situations as a result of like early passing down stuff, the Giants are going to have a aces offense.
Yeah,
they will.
All right, you need to tell me if this is a cop-out and if I need to pick one.
Okay.
My second one.
Go back.
Getting better on early downs in the red zone. Do you think I need to pick one? I think I do.
I think you do too. Because I was going to say they go hand in hand, but they also don't because the down and distance can change. Yeah, I think you do need to pick one.
I'm going to pick the red zone.
Ooh, interesting. I thought you were going early downs based on the fact that your boy Patrick Ricard is here.
Well, I think Patrick Ricard is the X factor for both of these things.
Okay. All right, so let's go with red zone. Red zone's more fun anyway.
I think that the 2025 Giants and that offensive line, they were not a kick-ass unit. They were a good unit. They were better pass blocking, at least in my opinion. You know, even though they were fifth in rushing, they were 18th in yards per attempt, right? Mm-hmm. They ran the ball a lot. Between Jaxson Dart, between all the running backs that they had, they ran the ball a lot. So I think the volume that I think they had the second most rushing attempts out of all teams last year. So of course they're going to be high in yards, but they were 18th in yards per attempt. So where I think the offensive line is quote unquote exposed is inside the red zone. When it's mano-a-mano, you're in a goal-to-go situation and you can't freaking score. And the Giants over the last 2 years, specifically over the last 2 years, have been despite the offensive line taking huge steps up and leaps and bounds forward, they have been an awful red zone offense. Believe it or not, even in 2025, they did get better inside the red zone. Now, if you take plays inside the red zone and goal-to-go situations, if you combine both of those scenarios, the Giants were last in EPA per play, they were last in EPA per pass, and they were 27th in EPA per rush in 2025.
Now, I would like to know in the brief weeks that Cam Scatterbo was active, how much better those numbers were than the rest of the year.
I actually can check that if you want to talk.
Okay. So the reason
let's go through the weeks that Cam Scatterbo was. I think it's 3 to 8.
Yeah, because I was going to say, week 1 in Washington, he basically gets a series or two. Then we get to week 2. That's the Cowboy game. He comes on the field briefly, but also that's pre-Jaxson Dart. So really we should go by the Jaxson Dart Scatterbo Giants, right? I think that's the combination, right? They go hand in hand.
Weeks 3 to 7.
So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're talking about 5 weeks of Giant football. That, to me, at least the eye test told me that this team was so much more functional within the red zone because Cam Scatterbo was both rushing and catching passes. Like he has that screen pass he catches versus the Denver Broncos and takes it in. Obviously getting down around the goal line versus the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. It did feel like with Cam Scatterbo and Jaxson Dart on the field together as a duo in the backfield, that is where the Giants felt like they were a real red zone team again. So while you bring up those negative numbers, we did lose Scatterbo in Philly. So what does that look like? Do we have that yet?
I don't have it yet. I'm blind.
So anyway, I'm just to keep looking. The reason I'm bringing this up is if this is going to be a big area for improvement, I would argue that this should be, of all the things we talk about, a slam dunk if the health is there. Because at least to me, it felt like it was an area that was already ready to hum and surge before injuries took over for the Giants. And that's not even factoring in the fact that Malik Neighbors really never got to play as a trio with Scadaboo and Jaxson Dart. And they've added Isaiah Likely now to the mix as well. So while you might not think of Mooney and Austin as necessarily red zone threats, at least within the red zone, your number one wide receiver, a tight end like that's, almost like a big slot, and Cam Scadaboo, those three targets, along with Theo Johnson as well, they should be able to score inside the red zone.
Yeah. I don't have it, but I think it's fair to say that it felt like they were a much better red zone. They had more options. Because when you talk about Cam Scadaboo, the receiving touchdown that he had versus Philly was awesome. There was a receiving touchdown that I think he had against Denver as well.
That was the one I was just referencing. Yep, so, on a screen. And just, barreling around the goal line. Like, it was very ho-hum when Cam Scadaboo was getting in the end zone. It was just... It almost got to the point in those 4 or 5 weeks where it felt like it was just common practice. Like, I know I got to a confidence level of, okay, they're going to score here, And it was a long time that we could say that, or it had been a long time since we could say that. And then it kind of all evaporated after Scadaboo went away. Which is part of the reason I said Scadaboo was better than people give him credit for this offseason. And then he was kind of an engine for the offense. Remember I kept using that word engine? It's because he scored when he was on the field.
I'm going through it's unfortunate it can't do cumulative weeks. I can only do week by week.
Okay.
Week 3, week 4, week 5, they were below 25th. Week 6, which was against the Eagles, they were 5th.
Okay.
And then week 7,
Denver.
They were, and I'm referencing EPA per play, by the way. They were 6th. So it's when it felt like the offense was starting to pick up steam.
Yep.
And Cam Scadaboo and Jaxson Dart together were picking up steam. They had 2 top 6 weeks EPA per play inside the red zone. But before that, it was pretty bad.
Then it hit the craps after that completely.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes sense. So I'm confident in that area for improvement, and with Patrick Ricard as well.
I think he's the biggest X factor because and Francis Moinoa. The fact that he's going to be 330 pounds, and Greg Van Roten was listed at 295 pounds. I mean, we're talking about 30 pounds of extra beef being added to this offensive line.
Hashtag Arby's, we have the meats.
We have the meats, free ad.
Yes, it was. Yes. Good call.
And also, Patrick Ricard himself is like 290 pounds. So, that is so much extra weight that is being added to this offensive line that could push and maul people forward. That has to be the X factor for what this red zone offense can do. It bothers me so much, Shaun, that I bite my nails at a 4th and 1 or a 4th and inches or a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and inches or a 3rd and goal. Or forget even 3rd down, 1st and goal from the 1. I'm like, God damn it, there's no room here. You can't move, you can't operate. I'm not confident that I have a football team that can get 36 damn inches on 4 tries.
Yeah, well, remember, Brian Dable, when he lost Jaxson Dart to the tent, wasn't confident either when he kicked the field goal versus Chicago.
Yeah, man. And should we do play action? Should we do something funky? Like, no, man, I want to have a personnel and a team that we feel confident that we can run the damn ball and get 36 inches if we need to. That's
right.
And hopefully they have that now. And like I said, Ricard, I think, is that X factor that can really literally and metaphorically push them forward. So, red zone. I picked that.
All right.
They also do need to get better on 1st and 2nd down, by the way, because Jaxson Dart was really good on 3rd down, and I don't know if that's sustainable. And that's where also Patrick Ricard can help, but you need to run the ball better on early downs.
Hell yeah. Malik Neighbors helps too.
Yes. You have one. No, we both did our 2, right?
Yeah, man. We did our 2.
So this is do you want to make the list first, or do you want to talk about our consensus number 1?
I think we could do our consensus number 1 because my list is different than this, so it feels weird to break it up.
Okay. So consensus number 1 is the damn run defense. The number 1 area of improvement the 2026 Giants need to make, and I think a lot of people agree. Hopefully you agree listening at home. And like Shaun said, I definitely think the front office and the team, everybody you talked about on the team, they say that this is the number one area of improvement. The Giants' run defense, I don't know if you know, they weren't very good last year. 75 runs of 10-plus yards allowed. That was 10 more than any other team. 19 runs of 20-plus yards. That's tied the Bengals for the most, the worst EPA per rush allowed in the league. And by the way, it was double the Dallas Cowboys. They were 31st at 0.06. The Giants were 0.12. So somehow the Giants were double the worst EPA per play allowed as a rushing defense than the 31st team. They were the only team in the NFL to allow more than 2 yards before contact per attempt. And specifically, what I want to talk about, Shaun, is they were so awful on runs outside the tackles.
Now, Justin, when you say that and you think back to last year, is there one run that sticks out to you? Because I know I have one.
I don't know if there's one run that specifically sticks out. But you tell me yours.
Mine, maybe this is biased because I was in the stadium, but
49ers, the
Brian Robinson's run, where you just looked and you could just see, here's an area for improvement. Tackle. How about that? I mean, God, the effort on some of those runs, but that's the play that sticks out. You're right. Every time it was bounced to the outside, whether it was a bad angle by a defender, just getting to the second level, lanes a mess all over the place. It was putridly pathetic. Like, it hurt my soul to watch some of those efforts.
As of the end of November, because Next Gen, they put out, like, insights every single week about the team. So this is as of the end of November. And I think this is a good barometer because this is around, like, you know, Charlie Boolin's starting to start, and they did play some bad football teams, and the defense did improve, so give them credit there. But just to show how bad it was when the season mattered, right? The Giants have allowed 6.2 yards per carry on design runs this season, over half a yard more than any other team in the next-gen stats era since 2016.
Crazy.
They seeded plus 556 rushing yards over expected. That was plus 40 more than any other team in that span, despite just playing 12 games. They didn't have their bye yet. They've allowed a 17.9% explosive run rate, also the highest in that duration. I mean, this was a historically bad run defense. I mean, there was a graphic that they were showing at one point in the season where it was a bunch of teams from like the 1930s and 1940s that have allowed like the highest yards per attempt in like league history. And then it was the 2025 New York Giants that was also featured on that as well. And specifically outside the tackles, they were awful. 51 of their 75 runs of 10 plus yards allowed came from outside the tackles. They were very, very bad, historically bad, specifically when it comes to outside the tackles.
Yeah, okay, so obviously this is going to go in terms of areas for improvement. All of those numbers just simply can't happen. They cannot happen with a new coaching staff, and they cannot happen for all the talk about losing Dexter Lawrence. Guess what? You're talking about outside the tackles. That doesn't really factor into the Dexter Lawrence's stuff in the middle. This is where improving the linebacker play, Justin, just flat out matters.
100%.
Edmonds and Orville Reese just flat out are the most important pieces to making sure that these stats do not stick again this year.
Yep.
Like, I don't know how to inflate that any other way. It is obviously it's on like a group effort with the team, but those two guys specifically have to be the biggest elevation to this group and to that specific area of improvement on this team. It just has to be.
The losses, like, okay, what did the Giants do to improve it? Here are the losses that they had, and here are the additions that they're making. They lost Shane Bowen. They lost Dexter Lawrence. They lost Bobby Okereke. They lost Roy Robertson Harris, who tore his Achilles. They lost Jordan Riley. They lost DJ Davidson.
Okay.
The additions that they made: Denard Wilson, Tremaine Edmonds, Orville Reese. I'm adding Micah McFadden to this list, by the way.
Because he was out after week one, or early in week one, yeah.
DJ Reader, Shelby Harris, and then there's Lecky Fotu, there's Bobby Tramerson Travis, Sam Robertson, Zach Pickens, which probably two or three of those guys probably won't even make the team. But those are the major additions that they made on this defense when it comes to defending the run. And you know what? I will add, like, let's add Colton Hood, because DBs tackling in the secondary are extremely important. Greg Newsome is a guy that they obviously added to. I think Colton Hood is going to bring, even though his tackle rate and sometimes his tackling technique isn't that good, I think he is going to bring a physical presence as a run defender on the outside.
we heard the same about Cordell Flott when he came in, and Cordell Flott always seemed to step up and play bigger than his size gave against the run game. But also when talking about Denard Wilson goes hand in hand with Tyler Nubin, right? I mean, how many times do we watch him on All 22 take some horrid angle on some kind of run play to the outside, and you're like, holy crap, Tyler Nubin. Like, that just simply could be a coaching thing, and that's where Denard Wilson don't just, gloss over that. They were lost. They were lost with Shane Bowen.
I also want to talk about, too, because I think what the Giants are going to try and do this year is run with more DBs and safeties on the field rather than like big bodies and running at a base, right? So I kind of correlate that in my brain with the Giants are not going to fully stack the box with 7 or more defenders in the box. Now, it is not a 1-for-1 scenario. I have stats and I have numbers here out of neutral and light boxes with 7 or less defenders. Now, you can have a stacked box, but have only 2 defensive linemen, 2. Oh my God, the lights went out again.
When the lights go out on Broadway.
How far into this are we?
We're about an hour.
Minutes. Yeah. All right, well, we're almost done. Now, it's not a 1-for-1 scenario, right? Just because you're running with a lot of safeties and DBs on the field, you can still stack the box if you want. But at least in my brain, when you're putting more DBs and safeties, you're not stacking the box. So just work with me here.
Okay.
The Giants had the 10th highest run rate when they had neutral or light boxes on the field. So when the Giants had neutral or light boxes, they had the 10th. Teams ran the ball at the 10th highest rate. And the Titans were 13th. So it was somewhat comparable among the two teams. The Giants were 32nd in yards per rush allowed, and the Titans were 19th when they had 7 or less defenders in the box. The Titans had the 6th highest stuff percentage, and the Giants had 10th. So that's tackles that go for 0 or negative yards.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the Giants over the last 2 years, because they have edge rushers that can make plays in the backfield, obviously Dexter Lawrence at a certain point. Believe it or not, the Giants had a good amount of plays that they stopped guys at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage for negative plays.
Yeah.
But it's just the plays that when you allow 10 and 20-yard runs, those are the ones that hurt the most.
That's the Giants' run defense, though. It was either a negative play or a play for 10+. That's the ironic part about the Giants' run defense.
The biggest difference, and this is, I think, a Denard Wilson stat, the biggest difference here, the Titans had the 3rd best yards before contact out of neutral light boxes. The Giants were last. Now, they were kind of equally both bad in yards after contact, but I kind of view that as a tackling thing and as a player thing.
Yep.
I kind of maybe view it as a scheme thing of where can a defensive coordinator place his guys, get his guys in a spot to make a quick play against the run or to at least get contact on a running back or whoever is holding on the ball, even if it's a quarterback or a receiver. So again, the Titans had the 3rd best yards before contact per attempt in neutral/light boxes. And that I view as a Denard Wilson thing. And again, the Giants were less than that.
That's where coaching matters.
Hope so.
We do hope so.
Hope so.
And remember, Charlie Bullen was retained on the staff when they got good.
Charlie Bullen was retained. So anything good that he did, and especially the camaraderie and the relationship that he had with the edge rushers, and that's awesome. Good. That will remain.
That matters. That matters.
All right, so Shaun, what we're going to do, oh no, we're not going to finish off. We have a freaking Fanatics Fivo to do. Holy smokes.
Yeah, but the Fanatics Fivo, Justin, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we are eventually going to get to, on an episode soon, projecting the 53. Is that correct?
Yes, we will do that. But before we get to the Fanatics 5-0, I do want to rank these. I want to come to a consensus with you and I.
That's right. Okay.
1 through 5. So number 1, we have the run defense.
Yes.
What do you feel like should be our number 2?
I think it's one of yours. Turnovers.
Okay. I can agree with that because I mean, our 100%. We mentioned how our 3 wins, like the sole 3 win for 3 out of the 4, the 3 wins that really kind of quote unquote mattered. The 3 wins that didn't shoot us in the foot of losing the number 1 overall draft pick. Isn't that crazy how that worked out? How we wanted to have the number 1 overall pick to have the opportunity to have 2 first-round picks, and it turns out that we had 2 first-round picks. We lost Dexter Lawrence in the process, but neither here nor there.
But you know what? In hindsight, Dexter Lawrence was probably always going to be miserable anyway in one out. We would have just had 3 first-round picks.
Yeah. Would have that been fun? So yeah, I would agree. Turnovers that could literally be the difference in numerous football games for the 2026 Giants. So 100% number 2.
Okay, so number 3 for me, I don't know if you would agree. If I'm going turnovers there, I think the sacks jump up because I think that they almost piggybacked each other. And I know that's kind of unsexy because it's going to make defense 1, 2, and 3 for me and leave the 2 offensive ones at 4 and 5, but I do believe that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
Especially when you consider what our personnel is, that it would almost be disheartening if that wasn't improved upon.
I'm going to pitch Redzone as more important than that.
Okay. I could be sold. I could be swayed. I could. Because that's in the end, that's scoring points when you get into the most important area.
Yes. Think of how Giants were 14th in points per drive last year.
You know what? Here's a good tie break, Justin. Doesn't matter how many sacks they have. If every time they get in the red zone, they're not scoring at a high enough clip. So I'm with you. Okay.
Giants were 14th in points per drive last year. I believe they were 27th in red zone rate. Red zone touchdown percentage.
So then I think we should put sacks 4, and then ironically the one that we argued with the most via text, passing offense 5, because in the end that was still the best of what they had of these other areas.
I think that's a very good 1 through 5.
I live with that. I like that.
I agree.
I like that. I think they will improve in all those areas though.
So now we move to the Fanatics Fivo. It is a segment that we do every single week. It is brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook, where Shaun Morash, he has a theme and he makes a list 1 through 5 of things that is on his brain and on his mind. You alluded to the 53-man roster prediction episode that we are going to do next week.
So we like to call this in a radio biz, Justin, a tease.
Yup.
We're going to make a 53-man roster. Well, I'm here to give you my Fanatics Fivo, who at this moment I think are the 5 most important depth pieces on the New York Football Giants. Here we go. Number 5. You just threw him in here willy-nilly in an episode. Said, I am going to count this guy, Micah McFadden. Because as we all know, with Arvell Reese, obviously kind of been used as a chess piece, and Tremaine Edmonds, you always end up using more than those 2 weak side inside linebackers. Micah McFadden, I actually think, is a very important depth piece for the New York Giants because I think he's going to end up playing a lot. So Micah McFadden, number 5. Number 4 for me, kind of funny to list this as a depth piece, but it counts, Kayvon Thibodeau. And I say this to say, for everybody talking about, well, they should trade him, get what they want. Maybe they do at the deadline. We'll see what happens. It seems like the Giant coaching staff likes him. Did anybody factor in what the hell happens if Abdul Carter or Brian Burns aren't healthy for 17 games this year? You think Kayvon Thibodeau's kind of important to what the New York Giants are going to do? Again, good to have depth. That's number 4. Number 3. Unsexy, but I think important, Devin Singletary. Now, people might say he might get cut. Okay. Well, Cam Scatterboo, for all the screaming and yelling, is he going to stay healthy? Tyrone Tracy, he was banged up last year. I actually think a veteran running back in the scheme that John Harbaugh, Matt Nagy, Greg Roman and company are going to have, I think Devin Singletary is going to have more significant snaps for the New York Giants than we think at this moment. And I think that's important on a John Harbaugh team, is to have Devin Singletary here, or at least some kind of veteran back. That's number 3. Number 2, it's a cheapie, but it's obvious, Jameis Winston, because the inevitability, whether it's concussions, blue tent or not, the quarterback, it's harder than ever to play 17 games, and having a capable backup that you're not just sitting there having to run the ball like the Tommy DeVito Jet game. I'm going Jameis Winston, number 2. Also, just think about when Russell Wilson had to come into that Bear game and we didn't even trust him to throw. Can't have that. Jameis Winston, at least will give you some capable shots down the field. And the number 1, and I think the most obvious depth piece for the New York Giants, is Marcus Bowe. Because Andrew Thomas playing 17 games is another major question mark. And James Hudson was a train wreck, and I think we kind of take for granted that Marcus Bowe was a completely capable, quality swing tackle when needed to play last year at either left or right tackle. And in year number 2, not having to worry about him starting, and he could just sit there and be the depth piece. The Giants went long enough without swing tackle being addressed. Swing tackle is the number 1 depth piece in the Giants, because I actually think they have a good one in Marcus Bowe. Yeah,
the thing with Marcus Bowe is I expect him he needs to get better.
Yes. Okay. If you're number 2 for a 5th-round pick, I would expect him to get better too.
Yeah. Which I'm gonna like sound like an asshole right now. Like, what do you mean? Of course he needs to get better. If he gets out there, right, and he plays and he starts some games and he performs in the same way in 2026 than he did in 2025, people are going to start to not like him.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, yeah, we did have that rookie bump where he kind of surprised us, and he was also being graded against terrible peers of previous swing tackle, Josh Azudu, James Hudson, and he was better than those. So we kind of took a turd, shined it up, and said, "Look at this shiny turd." I agree. I get it.
Yeah, and for a day 3 pick who was extremely, extremely raw, and probably the sole reason that he fell to day 3 is because of how unpolished he was. For that guy to go out there and for us not to get post Nate Solder, Eric Flowers, Evan Neal PTSD of just abysmal, unplayable tackles, even though the numbers and the efficiency and the pressure numbers, even though none of that was good. I mean, our eyes said this guy can, because he isn't a total disaster being here. You know,
the offense functioned when he was out there, and I think that honestly, when you have a swing tackle, it goes a long way. But yeah, I would expect him to get better. But knowing that, I don't think that's, put it this way, for the first time in a long time, I don't view swing tackle as a weakness, even if he does have to get better. And we just know how important it is. Well, as long as Andrew Thomas is on this team.
Yeah, I think Jameis being number 2 is a really good call too.
Yeah, you could do it. Look, I've given Jameis a hard enough time. You could do much worse in terms of backup quarterback when you need one too.
Yeah, even though it is my number 1 priority for Jaxson Dart to play at least 14 to 15 games this year. That is the stat that I think he needs to improve on the most. Mm-hmm. It's the goal. It's the threshold that I want him to reach in 2026 because that's how confident I am in Jaxson Dart that if he plays the games, he's going to be solid and he's going to be good and he's going to produce. But you have to be on the field for that. But the fact that if Dart isn't on the field and we're playing I don't know, if there's a game versus the Commanders, I'm not being oh my God. If there's a game against an NFC South opponent, an AFC South opponent outside of the Texans, I'm not going oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jameis could beat the Jaguars. Yes, exactly.
And those Jags had good defense last year, but
right. No, the Jags are good. I say that to say that he could beat a capable playoff team. He can.
Yeah.
Hell, he almost beat the Lions.
Yeah. The only thing I maybe would flip is Devin Singletary and Kayvon, but I like your list.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I like your list.
Thank you.
That was the Fanatics Fivo, and it was brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook. Thank you to Fanatics.
Justin was so nervous to do this show today. I had to tell him, calm down.
Stop it.
Calm down, Justin. We're going to churn out an hour plus. No problem.
I was nervous to do this show.
You were nervous, Rick. Texted me all day. Your head was in a blender. I had to calm you down. You know.
I'll show I'll have Jeff pull up the screenshots. It was Shaun, you all right? Shaun was texting me and be I am not confident. What are we doing? And I'm I think you're you. I was the one that needed to do my notes in my section.
Yeah,
you were good. You got it all worked out.
I know. And it's typical. We were fine.
Just when you think, we're not going to have enough, we go for an hour 10.
More than enough.
All right, well, that's going to do it. I hope you have a great, great weekend. I hope you do. And we will see you on Monday. I'm going to try and do an interview. That's the format, and that's the premise of the show. There may be a couple weeks where I actually flip when we do interviews because I am learning that it's not working out great with the OTA calendar. The Giants I think they're in the midst of their second round of OTAs right now.
Yep.
So currently how we have our interview format of this show scheduled, we're typically Mondays are an interview show, and then Thursdays are a full-on themed analysis show with Shaun and I. I may flip that eventually, but that will happen eventually. You have a good weekend. The Giants are in their midst of their second round of their OTAs. I'm going to be doing a 53-man roster prediction. We're going to be doing that next week. And what I did last year, I started this last year and it worked out really well. Got a lot of responses. I'm going to make a Google form. And you can fill out your own 53-man roster of who you think is going to make it. And I was able to show pie charts and things like that. It was a really good exercise, and it was a really, really good show. I think I did it solo last year, which, geez, 50-minute hour solo episodes that I would do talking to myself. And now, thank God for Shaun Marash. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that next week. I'm actually really looking forward to that because I love seeing everybody's responses. The offensive line is going to be fascinating.
Who's going to have Cambry making the team?
Dalen Cambry. I'm most excited for the back end of the roster. How are you going to organize your wide receiver room? Are you going to carry 5 wide receivers? Are you going to carry 6?
7?
Okay, we're going to end it now. Have a good weekend. Let's go, Giants.
It starts